Okay, next we start to get into more miscellaneous topics, infrastructure, security, and services. So we will be covering these, but these are going to be kind of minor points that you can just know where it's located on the documentation. And then in the exam, if you were tested on these, make sure you bring up those documentation pages, and then you can follow along with the examples. So for example, IP source guard, DHCP snooping, dynamic ARP inspection, these three are going to go together as what we call our first hop security, which is going to prevent an attack against the DHCP binding database and prevent against a what we call a man-in-the-middle attack, or an MIM attack. Okay, port security, private VLAN, so this is talking about layer 2 security features. Router security features, IPv4 access lists, IPv6 traffic filters. So nothing too complicated here, just filtering traffic. Like I want to deny telnet as it's going from point A to point B. Not a ton that we really need to focus on in security, because again, this is the enterprise infrastructure track. This is not the security track. IPv6 infrastructure security features, routing advertisement guard, DHCP guard. These are going to be similar to the first hop security protocols for IP version 4, which is DHCP snooping, IP source guard, and dynamic ARP inspection. Okay, we then have 802.1x port-based authentication. So we'll talk about how we can authorize the ports to say whether the user is assigned a VLAN, whether the port is coming up, or whether the port go into quarantine mode. Okay, system management, very minor stuff like how do we SSH in to the box, how do we use SNMP version 2C or version 3, how do we do logging. So you can't necessarily discount this stuff that it won't be covered in the exam, but these are the type of topics maybe you just want to try out once, know where it's located in the documentation, and then you can always circle back to this in the exam time if you were tested on this. Okay, quality of service we'll spend a decent amount of time on, and talking about the modular quality of service format. So how do we use the class maps, the policy maps, and the service policies in order to define a QoS policy? We'll talk about the diff-serve model. So how do we classify with the DSCP mappings? How do we do a mapping between class of service and DSCP? Classification would be, I want to mark my web traffic as it's coming in and give it some sort of separate processing. And we can use network-based application recognition to make sure that this is an actual web packet looking into deep packet inspection, as opposed to just any protocol that's running on TCP port 80. Okay, network services. We have our first hop redundancy protocols, so HSRP, GLBP, and VRRP. Those are going to be for redundancy of the default gateways. So we'll look at the different variations between them. What's the difference between GLBP and HSRP?